come back into the shot just because it looks a little bit more professional. My production levels, as far as like video production, I should say, have really gone downhill. When I first started making videos, I was adamant that I was going to do, like, I was going to have like a little video studio, and I was really going to like kick production in gear so that I could work on my YouTube channel. And then it turned out most of the videos that you guys are interested in, I could be sitting in front of a dumpster and you really don't care. So honestly, here we are. Hello everybody. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Riley. You may know me as Honey Rags if you are a part of or follow the Instagram reseller community. I'm a full-time reseller. I resell anything and everything, but I mainly resell clothing. That is where the majority of my income comes from, is reselling used clothing. I resell on Poshmark and eBay. I've been reselling since 2016, but my business has evolved, it's changed. My business model is constantly growing, and that's kind of what this video is about. So if you are not familiar with the Goodwill bins, it is the Goodwill outlet, aka pay by the pound. You literally pay by the pound for clothing at these Goodwill outlets. They bring in just these huge tubs, like on wheels, of donated clothing that hasn't been sorted. So you really don't know what you're gonna get. So this video is geared towards that. If you do not know what the bins are, that is what I'm referring to when I'm saying the bins, the bins, the bins. So before I start the video, I should let you guys know, I am not like a mathematical person in my videos. I'm not going to give you guys any numbers like cost of goods. I'm not going to like break anything down. If you are looking for like a bullet point list of informative things, this is not the video for you. I'm just going to be basically talking to you guys about why the Goodwill outlet is now a part of my business model when 2.5 years ago it was not. As a matter of fact, about 2.5 years ago, I made a video, and it's still up. You guys can go find it on my channel. I can try to leave a link down below in the description if I remember. I made a video telling you guys why the Goodwill bins was not a part of my business model and why it was not for me. Now, this video is obviously, if you can't tell by the title, the opposite. I am changing my stance on the Goodwill outlet. It is a part of my business model now. I've been slowly getting more and more inventory from there, and I finally surpassed the 50-50, where I'm probably 60% of my inventory is from the Goodwill bins, and 40%, if we're just looking at thrifted clothing, 40% is from like full price thrift shops. I'm really just making this video to make amends with my 2.5-year-old video. I know in that video I was not projecting on anybody's business model. I'm very cautious about stepping on toes. I don't sell I don't sell packages to you guys like you're gonna get rich quick if you listen to me. I don't sell promises. I really just make these videos because I like making videos. It's a hobby for me, especially the hauls. Like, that's my favorite part about my channel, is showing you guys my hauls. So there's no ulterior motive here. But there was a lot of kickback from people feeling like maybe attacked. But I did make sure to say in that video multiple times, just because it doesn't work for me doesn't mean it's not gonna work for you. I was never telling anybody that the Goodwill bins is the wrong way to do it. I was always jealous of people who got all their inventory at the bins 2.5 years ago because they paid way less than what I was paying. Like, I just wasn't in the situation where the Goodwill bins worked for me. I'm going to go over those reasons now. So 2.5 years ago, and I was already replacing a full-time income 2.5 years ago, just from thrift shops alone. So if you do not live by a Goodwill bins, but you're used to seeing a lot of resellers going to the Goodwill bins like on YouTube, and that's where they make their money, don't feel like reselling full-time and replacing a full-time income is not possible for you. Because I did it for years, paying thrift store prices before I incorporated the Goodwill bins into my business model. So don't feel, that was another thing. Like, I always felt below, I don't want to say below. I always felt like I had a huge disadvantage as a reseller because I didn't have the bins in my business model. And part of that was my own fault, but it also wasn't always possible for me to go because I was a mother of 3 small children. It's much easier to throw them in a cart and go to a regular thrift shop than taking them to the chaos that is the bins. So quick recap, why the Goodwill bins didn't work for me 2.5 years ago. The biggest thing was my children. The Goodwill bins had different times. I think it was open from like 9 to 6, and the Goodwills were open from 9 to 8. Now I know that's only a 2-hour difference, but that's a big 2-hour difference, because I could have my fiance come home and watch the children while I had 2 hours worth of Goodwilling. Whereas by the time he got home, I wouldn't have that much time left to go to the bins. So it really wasn't that possible for me. 2, I was lazy about going to the Goodwill bins. I didn't have a pattern as far as like a strategy of how to source at the bins. I didn't like the physical activity of digging, because let's be honest, the Goodwill bins is much harder physically on you than going to the regular thrift store. And another thing was, honestly, I was comfortable. I had been doing thrift stores exclusively for so long. I was comfortable, I was stubborn, and the Goodwill bins is gross. Like, if you're not, and I'll still say that, like, I know some people get mad, like, don't get mad when I say that, because most resellers can all like laugh at the fact that it's gross. But I guess, some people take offense because their inventory comes from it. Guess what? My inventory comes from the Goodwill bins, and it is nasty. It is the equivalent of like the New York subway station on New Year's Eve. I know there's got to be some of you guys who have ordered from me before and are probably like, my stuff was coming from there. But like, I wash everything from the bins. You guys know I'm a storyteller. I'm dramatic. It is gross. It's not. Okay. So anyway, over the past year, maybe year and a half, 2 years, I've slowly started going to the bins more. And the only reason that really pushed me to that point was because I did get to a point where I was outgrowing myself as a business. For a long time, I was doing equal part used clothing and equal part like Amazon liquidation and Amazon customer return pallets. So I had enough thrifted clothing from full price thrift shops to list throughout the month, because I was also doing this other thing. Well, I kind of shifted myself more towards used clothing, because for me at work, I see a higher net profit than I did on the Amazon. There's less with thrifted clothing, way less returns. I'm the one picking out each individual item, whereas when I was doing Amazon pallets, I was looking at a manifest. I didn't know if things were broken, shattered, whatever. So I was outgrowing myself. Like, I got to a point where, I'm very lucky. I have like a dozen thrift stores in a 15-mile radius, but I got to a point where I went to every thrift shop, and I couldn't bring home that much new inventory, because regular thrift shops only put so much out. So I got to a point where I was like, I need to find more stuff, because if I want to grow as a business, because that's the goal, right? Constantly doubling, not always doubling, but constantly growing last year's net profit, constantly growing that income from last year. And if I wanted to get that point, I needed to bring home more clothes. So it literally came down to the fact where I was like, where do I find more clothes? The Goodwill bins. Another thing that really helped, my kids got older. So it's easier to find, to have I shouldn't say find people, like I'm handing them to people who work at the gas station, like, here, take my kid. No, it's easier for me to have my family members watch my children once they're older. Now they're in school. So my kids grew up, I needed more inventory. And at some point, as much as I feel that I can say I comfortably make a comfortable living doing what I do, at the peak of bringing all this stuff home from the regular thrift shops, I was like, I'm spending like $700 a month on thrifted clothing, and I can cut that number like 80 to 90% if I did all of this at the bins, which everybody know. I mean, that's very common sense in the reseller community. You go to the bins because it's cheap, there's less room for error. But for me, I was just stubborn, and I'm like, well, yeah, I'm paying more for my inventory, but it's also more comfortable to get that inventory. Everything's presented to me. A lot of the sourcing for me, a lot of it is the active retail therapy, if that makes sense. I get that retail therapy at Goodwill, whereas when I go to the bins, I don't feel retail therapy at all. Another huge thing for me was getting comfortable with being in the competitive environment that the bins are. So I'm not a competitive person at all. I'm still not. And I don't want to say my first few. my first 100 experiences at the bins, which is still ongoing. This still happens. This will happen at any location, any outlet location. It's very competitive. People are very pushy. People don't know boundaries at the bins, which is weird, even with COVID, even with rules. Like, there's clearly signs everywhere that say 1 person per table. I think once out of every 3 times I go to the bins, there is at least one lady, it's always a lady, who is so close to me that I can feel her breath. I can feel the morsels from what she had for lunch steaming on the hairs of my neck. Like, literally, I can't explain it. And I've gone to many different bins locations. I don't want to say many. I've been to like 3, but it's everywhere. Like, people will just get really close to you, and there's a weird personal space issue going on with the bins, combined with the competitive thing. Like, I feel like I have to rush to everything. I hate that, and I still hate that. But I just got to a point where I was like, you know what? If I need more clothing, because the 12 or dozen thrift stores in a 15-mile radius of me, they're not producing enough for me to keep growing, because at some point I just hit a plateau. That was the platform. That was the peak. I'm like, how do I grow? How do I grow from this? Because the Goodwills aren't going to get bigger. You know, they put out a certain amount of items. So that, combined with the fact that I just basically bit the bullet. My kids got older. That's why I really changed my stance on the Goodwill bins. I don't want to say anything bad about the people at the bins either. I was talking about that lady breathing on my neck. There will always be people like that. There's always going to be, your neighborhood crackhead. And I shouldn't have said that. Oh my God. I gotta edit that out. I've found things at the bins that I would never look for at a regular Goodwill. Like, when I'm at the regular Goodwills, I'm not thinking I'm going to go look through all the blankets. I mean, I've done it a few times, but I'm not thinking I'm going to go look through this random stuff, because I'm like set on what I'm set on. Where at the bins, if you get a clothing bin, they throw comforters, sheets, just like Christmas stockings, like anything soft, like made out of textile, they will throw in the textile bin. So there are a lot of things that I found to flip at the bins that if I were looking at a regular thrift store, I wouldn't have even looked in that section and thought I'm going to find something to resell. So that's really why I changed my stance. That was the point of the video. I hope you guys understand why I felt the need to make this. I don't feel the need to make this. I shouldn't say that. Nobody's like private messaged me and been like, "Dear Honey Rags, 2.5 years ago, you told us you hate the bins, and now all your stuff's from the bins," which it's not, but I've surpassed the 50-50 now. Like, nobody's like messaged me like that, but I just do feel like, I should at least give a follow-up video. I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from. So if you made it this far, I'm going to leave a link down below in my description to my Instagram, which is honey.rags. And from there, there's a link to my website. As always, happy thrifting, happy selling, and stay safe.